The Digitech Whammy has been around in one form or another for the last 35 years and has become the industry standard when it comes to pitch shifting for guitar. It has graced the floor on many a famous guitar player's pedalboard and featured on countless records. But as you can see, it's quite large and it's pretty bulky. When you consider though that most of us would probably only use it for one or two songs in your set list, it commands a fair bit of pedalboard real estate. For this video, we're going to look at 4 different Whammy alternatives that would fit on a discrete pedalboard. These pedals are made by 4 different manufacturers, which means that no 2 of them are exactly the same. They all have their own different set of features. But what you might find is that one of them might be able to do the one thing that you want this thing to do, just in a much smaller footprint. But before I get started on that, I'm going to take you through the Whammy and show you a bunch of different things that you can do with this. Some of them you may have not have thought of. But before I begin, if you like this kind of content, please help me out by subscribing. So the first thing is probably the most obvious, which is the siren. So basically to do that, you set it to 1 octave up so that when the heel is all the way back, it's just normal. And then when you push the heel all the way down, it goes up 1 octave. Now you can use this to embellish your solos or to make a boring riff a little bit more interesting. Case in point, that riff that you heard at the very beginning. It's a pretty ordinary Tom Morello rip-off riff. However, by adding a couple of sirens in there, it just made it a little bit more interesting. So here's what that sounded like without the drums and bass. Number 2 would be to set it for dive bombing. So basically you would set it to an octave down or 2 octaves down. You'd have the heel all the way back, and then when you want to do your dive bomb, you start to push the treadle down and you get a dive bomb effect. Number 3, you can use this as a makeshift trem if you've got a guitar with a hardtail, for example, my Telecaster. So what you do is you set it to a 2nd down, a 4th down, or a 5th down, depending on how far you want to go. And what you do is you play a chord or a note, and then you just rock it back and forwards a little bit like you would use a whammy bar on a guitar. Number 4 would be an extreme siren. So to do that, you set it to 2 octaves up. Be aware that this can be a bit piercing and it's very irritating when you're playing higher notes. This is the sound that Tom Morello used to do the Killing in the Name solo. Number 5, you can use one of these to down tune your entire guitar. So to do that, I would set it to about a 2nd below or maybe a 4th below, nothing too much further past that. And basically it just drops the tuning of your whole guitar. Now you do notice when you're playing, there is a bit of a delay between when you strike the strings and when you hear the sound. That can be a bit irritating, but as we will see with some of these other pedals, they actually do a better job of that than this particular pedal. As I said before, you might only want to down tune it about 1 step. Once you start going below that, it sounds less and less defined. It starts to sound really muddy. So this is what it sounds like by taking that same guitar tone and dropping it down a 5th. Number 6, this has a function on there called detune. Now detune is something similar to chorus. It splits your signal in 2. It leaves one side of it intact and the other one, it will put it out of tune just slightly. The mixing of the 2 together makes it quite, sort of a more lush and bigger sound. It kind of sounds like a guitar that's been double tracked with another guitar that's not quite perfectly tuned to it. You could use detune instead of chorus, and most people would be none the wiser. Number 7, you can use the whammy as an octave pedal. So if you use this side of the pedal, it blends 50-50 your dry signal with the affected signal. So if you go up to the top here, it has octave up and octave down. So if we have the heel all the way back, we have an octave up, and when we go down, we have an octave down with your dry signal. With the octave down, I think it sounds fine. With the octave up, it doesn't sound so great. In fact, I've never heard a pedal that does that well. And as you're going to hear later in this video, some of these other pedals do it a lot worse than this. The 8th and final use I can think of for the whammy is to use it as a harmonizer. But I've got to say, this is not its strong point. So down here, we have all the different harmony intervals that it can do. Now, if I'm going to put a harmony in music, my go-to, and most people's go-to, would be using thirds. But the problem with thirds is that sometimes they're major and sometimes they're minor. In the major scale, for example, if I was going to play the major scale, I would have 3 major thirds and 4 minor thirds. So if you set it to third mode, you actually have to switch between major and minor third using the treadle. Now, if you get this wrong, it sounds awful. The most useful harmony mode on this is a 5th that slides up to a 6th. All in all, I'm not a big fan of the harmony function on this pedal because it is not an intelligent harmonizer. The first of these whammy alternatives that we're going to look at is the Digitech Whammy Ricochet. So this is made by the same company who made the original whammy, and basically it's supposed to fulfill the needs of people who need a discrete whammy style pedal. So if you wanted to use this for your typical whammy uses, what you do is you put it into momentary mode. And that means that this foot switch is going to start to activate as soon as you put any kind of pressure on it. So this is what we call pressure switch. So it's controlled by these 2 controls here. We have some concentric pots here that control the rise and fall time. So by turning them up a little bit like that, when I start to press down on that switch, it will gradually get to the top of its range, and then it will gradually come down. Most of us probably wouldn't want that even up and down shift. You probably want to come back to your original note a bit quicker, so you can set this outside control here to make it return back to its original note a bit quicker. As you probably noticed, these LEDs down the side gives an indication of where in the pitch shift process we are, whether we're just starting out, if we've got all the pressure down, or if we've released the pressure completely. In the middle here, we have this toggle switch for up and down. So basically, if you go to an octave here and you've got it in the down position, it will pitch shift down to an octave. If you flick it like that, it will go up an octave. This pedal does away with the detune function, and it also does away with all those useless harmony functions as well. It doesn't have a balance knob, unlike all of the other pedals that we're going to look at. So all of these modes, you have 100% of the effect, except for they've kept the octave plus dry, which gives you an octave effect. You can use this pedal to down tune your guitar. In my opinion, I actually think this does it better than the Whammy 5. I just find that it does it quicker, meaning that there's less delay between the time that you play and the time that it processes the signal. So this is a really good tool for down tuning. I even find dropping it down a fifth on this actually sounds better than it did on the Whammy. Now, if that's the only thing you're going to use this pedal for, Digitech actually have another pedal called the Drop, which down tunes your guitar and doesn't have any of the Whammy functions, so it's a bit cheaper. So if that's the function you want, I would recommend you go get the Drop. All up, I was super impressed with the Whammy Ricochet. Next up, we have the Electro Harmonics Pitch Fork. While this is still available, they do have a newer version out that has more features, but it's a hell of a lot more expensive. Now, I was super impressed with how much they're able to cram into this tiny pedal. It's just got 2 knobs and 2 switches, and that is it. It is super easy to use. Now, the pressure switch on this pedal works a bit differently to the other pedals that we're going to look at. Basically, as soon as you start to press down on this, it goes straight to the top of its range, and as soon as you start to release the pressure, it goes straight back. All of the other pedals, you can control it a bit more than that. However, it does make up for it by having an expression pedal out jack. So you can actually plug an expression pedal in and then use it like a traditional Whammy pedal. Yes, you can use this for harmonies. It's not particularly good for that role because it's not an intelligent harmonizer. It's a bit like the Whammy pedal. But you've got a blend here, so you can blend how much of that harmony you have in your signal. So if you want to pull that back a little bit, you can, which is a great function. You can also use this as an octave pedal. I'm going to demonstrate this using 2 octaves at once, and I'm just going to turn the blend down so that those octaves don't really overtake my sound. This is something you can't do on either of the 2 Whammy pedals. You can use this pedal to down tune. It's not quite as good as the Digitech Ricochet in my opinion, but to do that all you do is you turn your blend all of the way up, you pick your interval, you set your octave, whether it's going to be octave up or octave down, and you need to put it into latch mode here, which basically means that when I hit that switch it'll come on and stay on. It sounds pretty good, but there is a bit more delay on this than on the Whammy Ricochet. Although this pedal doesn't have a detune mode, Electro Harmonics have crammed a lot into a very small package, and I actually really like this pedal. Next up, we have the TC Brainwaves. Now this is capable of a few things that the other pedals aren't. So for example, it's got stereo through. So if you're running it in stereo, you can use it with a keyboard or something like that, or you can run it towards the end of your chain if you're a guitar player if you want. It also has memory slots. It's got 3 memory slots, so you could have 3 different presets for this pedal and just flick between them. Like the Whammy Ricochet, you have a pressure switch here to do all your pitch shifting. But unlike the Ricochet, it doesn't give you control over the rise and fall. So you have to do all of that with your foot. And I've got to say, it's fairly difficult to operate. Unlike the Digitech pedals, we have two different voices. So for example, you could run an octave and a fifth together, which is something you can't do on any of the other pedals that we've looked at. My favorite though is to have an octave up and an octave down. Now you can use this like an octave pedal by using the mix knob here and mixing the dry signal back in. I'm not sure if you could hear it, but there was a massive delay between the dry signal and the two octaves that were coming in after it. It almost sounded like a very quick slapback delay, and I don't like that sort of sound. That to me is the hallmark of a cheap octave effect. Now you can attempt to get the 12-string sound by having an octave up with this pedal, but as you'll hear, I think that the octave up on this pedal is its biggest downfall. I think it sounds terrible. So this pedal has 4 different modes. It's got pitch shift mode, it's got voice 1 into 2, it's got whammy mode, so if you want to do your whammy effects you have to set it to that. That takes out of play the mix knob. Then you also have a detune mode as well. Now the detune on this is unlike any of the other pedals we're going to look at today because you can actually control the intervals of which it's detuning, which is really cool and very interesting. So you can set one of the voices up as a fairly shallow detune and you can set the second voice up as a deeper detune, and you can run them both at the same time. Now, if you want, you can use this pedal as a harmonizer, but it's got the same problem as both the Pitch Fork and the original Whammy pedal in that it's not an intelligent harmonizer. However, TC Electronic do have a small size intelligent harmonizer called the Quintessence. So if harmonies is your thing, don't worry about this pedal. Get yourself a Quintessence instead. Next, we have the Boss PH6 Harmonist. Now this one is probably the most feature-packed out of all of them, but it's also the oldest, and I think that's really important. When it comes to digital technology, old usually means that it's been superseded, and most of those other pedals are at least 5 years younger than this. If you want to use this pedal as a whammy pedal, you select S bend, and then you use these two controls here for rise and fall time, just like the Whammy Ricochet, which I think is really cool. It makes this foot switch here a lot more usable. Then in the middle, we have our shift. So that you have all kinds of different intervals that you can shift down to, and it also can do sort of octave up, octave down, sort of tape warp type things as well. Like the Pitch Fork, it has an expression pedal out so that you can plug in an expression pedal to do all of your whammy style effects if you want. You can use this pedal to downtune your guitar, but I don't think it's particularly good for that. So you set it to pitch shift mode, and then you use the shift knob here to find the interval that you want to shift to. Now, all of the other pedals have a second as one of the intervals, which means you're just dropping your guitar down a whole step. And that usually sounds the most realistic because you're not asking the pedal to do too much. Once you start to drop it down further, it sounds less and less realistic. Now, the first interval I could find on here to drop tune it to was about a fourth, and already starts to sound not so great. You can use it as an octaver. You can have octave up, octave down, or both at the same time. And you have a balance knob so that you can wind that down a bit, because I really do find particularly octave up does tend to overtake your tone. This also has a detune function, which I think sounds really good. Now, the strongest aspect of this pedal is, surprise, surprise, the harmony aspect of this pedal. So this is the only pedal that we've looked at today that is an intelligent harmonizer. Now, what that means is I can actually set the key that I'm working in, and then I can choose to use either major or minor scales. So when I go and I decide to use my thirds like I want to use, and I start to play, it will automatically choose the right third to go with it, whether it be a major third or a minor third. You can put your harmony parts above or below the tonic note that you're playing, and you can also use the balance knob to wind it down a little bit, because pitch effects really do tend to overtake your sound. So winding it down is not a bad thing. This pedal also does 3-part harmonies, so I can have a first, a third, and a fifth going on at the same time. As you could probably hear, there was a bit of a delay between my direct signal and the harmonies coming in after it. And that basically tells me that the processor in this is probably not quite powerful enough. Now, if a harmony pedal is what you want and you want a really high quality one, I wouldn't even bother with this. I'd go straight for an Eventide H9. Now, as a final test for these pedals, I'm going to put them up against the Whammy, playing the solo from the song Like a Stone by Audioslave. Now, I've added a delay into the effects loop for this, and I'm not going to use the expression pedal out for the two pedals that are capable of that, because I think that that would be kind of cheating. So we're going to use the pedals as they are. so here's my ranking of these 4 pedals. Coming in last, unfortunately, is the Brainwaves by TC Electronics. Now, I'm not having a go at TC Electronics because they've done some great pedals. I just don't think this is one of them. The pressure switch there is too hard to control, and the upper octave is really shrill and nasty. So there's more delay signal going on with this one than any of the others. You know, I accept there's going to be a certain amount of delay going on, but this is just too much. And yeah, not their best pedal. Coming in at number 3 is the Boss PH6. Now, out of all of them, this one has the most capabilities. It's the only one that has an intelligent harmonizer, which is really cool. But my biggest complaint with this pedal is, again, it's that delay time. There's too much delay between my direct signal and the affected signal, and that really does bother me. It's not particularly good for down tuning, unlike some of the other pedals we're going to look at. But I think Boss are probably due for a new harmonist, and I reckon if they bring out a new one today, it would be superior to this one. I found separating the Whammy Ricochet and the Pitch Fork to be incredibly difficult. Both of them had features that I wish the other pedal had. So the Pitch Fork, for example, has the blend control, which I think is really useful. It has the option to use 2 octaves at once, so you can get those sort of organ sounds, which is really cool. But probably most importantly, it has the expression pedal out, so you can plug in an external pedal. Now, I know a lot of you are thinking, well, if that's what you want, just get a Whammy pedal. Well, the good thing is that I can kind of set this to, say, an octave up, bury it in my pedalboard, and just have the expression pedal sitting out, and it's still going to save space on my pedalboard over, say, a full-size Whammy. The Whammy Ricochet had 3 positives over the Pitch Fork. First of all being the pressure switch here, which was the best out of any of the pedals that we looked at. It's the easiest to use, and you've got the added bonus of the ballistic controls there to really fine-tune it. Number 2 is the LED control down the side, which is super cool, but it really helps you to visualize where in that sort of pitch sweep you are. It lets you know that you've got a bit extra to go to if you want to. It also lets you know how far you are to coming back to normal pitch. Very useful. But for me, the thing I liked about this the most was the processing times on this just seemed to be shorter than all of the other pedals, meaning that it did its job quicker. And to me, that's probably the reason I'll keep this over all of the others. I wish it had an expression pedal out. You know, I wish it had a blend control, but ultimately that extra processing power that this just seems to have over the others gives it the edge, in my opinion. If you use any of these pedals at home, please let me know how you like to use them. If you think I was right or you think I was wrong in any of my opinions there, again, let me know. I want to know what you think. So if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, and if you haven't already, please subscribe. You can join the Middle Age Gear Junkie Facebook page by clicking on the link in the description. You can also support this channel by going to the Middle Age Gear Junkie store and buying some merchandise. Other than that, my name is Jason. Have a wonderful day. See you later.